Springfield, Missouri, 1992. During a calm summer night, 3 women vanished from their home under utmost mysterious circumstances. Even though the disappearance is a very well-known case in the USA, the police don't even have a lead in this case 30 years later. This is the disappearance of the Springfield Three. On June 6, 1992, 18-year-old Stacy McCall and 19-year-old Susie Streeter graduated from high school, with mother of Susie, 47-year-old Sherry Levitt, being in attendance at the girls' graduation ceremony. The mother left earlier to go home and do some home improvements, and left the ceremony ground at John Q. Hammond Student Center at around 4 p.m. and arrived at her home at 1717 East Delmar Street soon after. The girls, on the other hand, as it is common to celebrate such a big milestone like a graduation, made plans to go to different parties in the Springfield area during the night. They left the school grounds at approximately 6 p.m. and separated to change their outfits and pack for a sleepover. The 2 girls met up again at around 8:15 p.m. at their first destination, 5002 West Coach Drive in Battlefield, a town close to Springfield, and there they start celebrating their graduation. At 10:30, Stacy calls her mother to tell her that they will stay at that address overnight. Stacy also says she will call her mother when they leave the house in the morning. Between 11:30 and 1 a.m, the girls switch to another party, 1535 East Hanover Street back in Springfield. The accounts conflict on the exact time they left, but it doesn't matter to the timeline. At 2 a.m, the girls return to the first party by foot, as they went to party 2 with other people. Back at party 1, they realize that the house is too full for a sleepover, and so they decide to go with their cars to Susie's home. They leave at 2:15 a.m. and take a 15 to 20 minute drive to 1717 East Delmar Street, where the eventual disappearance took place. From that point onwards, no witness accounts are available to distinctively tell us what happened to Susie, Stacy, or Cheryl. But the house gave a few clues to what happened after they left the last party. So I will give you a little tour of some parts of the house with my VHS camera, and if you may, pay attention to the suspicious things I point out. They will become important later on. Is this thing on? In front of us is the house in question. We know that everybody arrived at the house due to the cars being in the driveway. The girls arrived at around 2:30 a.m. and the mother Cheryl arrived at 4 p.m. the day before. She had a phone call at 11:15 p.m. with a friend, which indicates that all was well at that time. At 8 a.m, Janelle, which is a friend of the girls, came to the house as she had plans with them during the day. For their plans they wanted to leave early, but Stacy and Susie didn't pick up the phone earlier. Janelle arrives with her boyfriend and the glass on the floor, that's from the porch light up there. That was the only thing that pointed towards some form of struggle. How it broke is unclear, and Janelle thought it was weird but decided to clean the glass away, and she threw it in the neighbor's trash. She also found out that the front door was unlocked. Inside the house she found no one present besides the family dog Cinnamon, who seemed anxious. Janelle saw that the TV in Susie's bedroom was still on. The curtains in her room were opened, and everyone's purses were left on the floor in Susie's room, all lined up in a row. The place where they were found was right here. During the time Janelle was in the home, she answered 2 phone calls from someone with a male voice speaking sexually explicit, but didn't think much of it, and those calls were not recorded. She left the house with her boyfriend to go on with the plans. She would come back later in the day. In the meantime, the mother of Stacy got worried because she didn't receive a call from her daughter in the morning as Stacy promised the night before. So she calls up the address in Battlefield and finds out that the girls stayed in 1717 East Delmar Street overnight instead. So she arrives here at 1 to 6 p.m. with the exact times being unclear. She found items that Stacy wore during that night and realized that the girls made it to the house and even changed and prepared for sleeping. The mother then calls the police at some point. After finishing the call, she saw that there is a message on the answering machine which also includes explicit sexual content, and she deletes it by accident. The police arrived 16 hours after the girls were last seen and believed that the crime scene was corrupted by 10 to 20 people like friends and family before the police showed up. So let's go over the key facts together. The 3 women made it home and were present from 2:30 AM onwards and were taken from there. What I didn't mention before is that Susie's car was not standing where it usually was parked, indicating that someone was already parked there when they arrived. It seems like the girls were preparing for bed or already in bed, as Susie always turned on the TV when she tried to sleep, and Cheryl's bed looked like someone slept in it. She also had her glasses and a book on the bed, indicating that she read before sleeping. There was no sign of forced entry, which makes it very likely that the women opened the door on their own after noticing a familiar face outside or someone dressed as a police officer, for example. The only sign of a struggle is the porch light casing being broken. Maybe someone broke the porch lights to lure the girls outside. No items were stolen, making the women the targets. Important items were left behind, like cigarettes for Cheryl, who was a chain smoker, and Stacy's migraine medicine, which many people suffering from migraine or people who are chain smokers pointed out are items you would never leave behind even if you leave in a hurry. Also, belongings like keys and money were left behind. The 2 girls' plans kept changing during the night, which makes a planned abduction very unlikely. If we take all this into consideration, it's possible that the perpetrator was someone the women knew. This takes the suspect list from 7.7 billion down to a few dozen. Like for example Susie's ex-boyfriend Mike Kovacs, a 17-year-old boy at the time who admitted to a newspaper article that he abused her and they fought physically during their relationship. He quote, beat her up and slashed her tires, threatened her by phone and harassed her at home, school and work. This is what Susie told Greene County Circuit Court after asking for a restraining order against Kovacs. She also stated that there is, quote, an immediate and present danger of abuse to her. Susie worked at a local gym and often told colleagues that she was afraid of Mike, and when it was late they had to bring her to her car because she was so afraid of him. Now after you heard all that, you probably think that makes him the prime suspect in this case. Well, what if I told you that the police had 4 or 5 people with no substantiated alibis and Kovacs was one of those individuals? Makes him very suspicious, right? Well, the police thought otherwise because after Mike passed a polygraph test he was not investigated further. Then again, maybe Mike saw Susie at one of those parties and that's why Susie got scared and wanted to sleep in her own home, and Mike suddenly felt hatred against her after seeing her. It is also stated very often that domestic violence doesn't simply end with a breakup. Someone else with crazy exes was Cheryl. She had 2 ex-husbands, one of them was Don Levitt. Don had a big amount of debt and his creditors also pressured Cheryl to pay them. That's one of the reasons why Cheryl moved to Springfield from Seattle. Now Stacy also knew a suspicious guy named Robert Cox. Robert worked with her father at a car lot. Robert was guilty of similar crimes like abusing and kidnapping a woman in 1985. He is suspected of the killing of a young woman in 1992. He also was convicted of murder of a young woman in 1978, but the decision got overturned. All the crimes he is suspected of doing or was convicted for included women similar to Susie and Stacy. He had an alibi for the night by his girlfriend, but she later retracted it. There is no indication though that Robert had anything to do with the case.
I'll say that. I know that.
That's not a theory.
Yeah, but I know that I just know that they're dead. That's not my theory, I just know that.
Because the police weren't convinced with any of the suspects, they started looking elsewhere. The police received more than 5,200 tips on this case from 21 different states. Some were more intriguing than others, like the 2 vans that were in the neighborhood at the time and afterwards disappeared. One of them was a green-gray Dodge van similar to this one. The van was built between 1964 and 1970. The person giving the tip heard a male voice speaking in a threatening tone, "Don't make any silly moves." He said this to a driver matching Susie's description. The van was seen at 6:30 AM on the day of the disappearance. The police suspect if the women were actually in this van, it was most likely human trafficking. This is backed up by a comment of someone who lived in Springfield their entire life. Quote, They got caught up in a very foul sex trafficking route around here. The tip about the van made the local police place a similar van in front of the police station to find its whereabouts, but no helpful tip ever came from it. Another tip came from a worker at a store called Apeco A-Mart. Reportedly, a woman matching Cheryl's description came in and asked if he saw her daughter. She seemed in a hurry and maybe a bit upset. This happened in the morning of the disappearance at around 2:15 AM. The police found this tip quite interesting as it would, quote, narrow the gap of the unknown. Also, we feel some type of significant event must have happened to cause Miss Levitt to leave her home and begin searching for her daughter at 2 AM. A woman working at a shop across the street stated that she got a better look on the woman and didn't think it was Cheryl. There was also a server that reported that 3 women visited George's steakhouse together with 3 men between 2:20 AM and 3 AM. Susie was reportedly under the influence, but that has not been substantiated by the police and not deemed as significant as the store clerk's tip, as nobody saw or recognized the women afterwards and the steakhouse was full during the time. In 2007, the parking garage of the Cox Hospital was investigated. There was a rumor going around that the bodies of the 3 women were buried underneath. Armed with the rumor and a tip from a psychic, crime reporter Kathy Baird went to investigate. With her was a man that used a ground reader to detect anomalies in the concrete, and they found 3 grave-like anomalies. The whole thing seemed kind of odd, as skeptics claimed that such a radar can penetrate concrete floors. The police thought so as well and didn't inquire further into the anomalies. But what we know is that in 1992 the hole for a foundation was dug, but they didn't have the permission to build yet. So someone could have hidden the bodies there and the garage was built on top of it. So where does this leave us at? It is very likely that either the mother or the girls were the targets and the other ones just got caught up in a situation. The police pretty much has no lead. They look through water, land and air, and to this day they have no lead whatsoever. It is kind of sad that this case became a cold case, and it is unbelievably scary to have 3 people disappear without a trace and never show up again. Whatever happened to those women, I hope if they're still alive they are somewhere good, even though nothing points to that. The last thing we can do is learn from it. I will check twice before I let someone in at night, even if I know this person. So yeah, you can of course comment down below your opinions or your theories on this case, and I would love to read them. So yeah, I hope you have a nice day and I see you next time.